Hey guys, it's Queen Rek'Sai, and I have a tier list for you guys that I just made up, and I'm gonna go over it with you guys and show you my philosophy on generally the items I build, or the items you could build, or how good they are, or in certain situations when I would build them. And so I'm just gonna go ahead and get straight into it. Alright, so at the top of S tier, we have our completed items. We're gonna go over those first, and then we'll go over components second for each tier. And so for the completed items, I have Hollow Radiance, Titanic, and Thornmail. And so for Hollow Radiance and Titanic and Thornmail, this is what I call the anti-heal trifecta, because you get the anti-heal from Thornmail, but you also get the HP from all of these items, which affects your passive, affects Hollow Radiance, and also affects Titanic. But you also get armor and MR and AD. These are all stats. These are basically all the stats you really want as Rek'Sai. The only set that you don't get here that you actually really want is move speed, in my opinion. I think Rek'Sai top actually has a really big mobility problem. And so these items help you offset that, makes you tanky enough to actually get to your target in a timely manner and clear the wave. All of these items are really good for wave clear, and stacked on top of each other make it really hard for enemies to contest your push. But even you can build any of these items by themselves and it will be good. All of these items, I would say, are really good rush items if you feel like the situation calls for it. If you're going to get some, let's say, an Irelia and a Jarvan in the jungle, and you're like, oh man, well, I'm going to get Bramble Vest because I'm fighting Irelia, right? Well, you get a Bramble Vest, you're like, man, well, I'm backing on like 600 gold. I'm just going to sell D-Shield and get Thornmail. You get a really early Thornmail right way before she gets Bork, and now she does not heal at all. Every time she Qs you, she basically doesn't heal. She just takes damage from the Thornmail, and she gets the reduced healing, right? And so these items, each of them have their own unique circumstances that they're good in by themselves, but overall, I would say they're generally really good items to build. So, my personal favorite out of the three is Titanic, but you can't always afford to go Bruiser in majority of matchups. So it's okay to go tank. It's okay to go Thornmail or Hollow Radiance whenever it's armor or MR that's needed. Just be careful you don't get caught into a trap where you go Thornmail into, let's say, Sunfire, for example. You're stacking a bunch of armor and HP together, but you don't have any AD, you don't have any MR, and so now you have this really vulnerable area where, hey, I don't deal enough damage sometimes if you're not ahead of the curve enough, or hey, the 1-on-1 Mel mid does like half of my HP bar, even though everyone else is AD and they don't hurt me, right? So you got to be wary of things like that whenever you're building HP items like that. Let's talk about the components in S tier. So we have Bommies, Aegis Legion, and Spectre's Cowl and Giant's Belt. You'll notice all of these items here are tank items. That's because Rek'Sai top struggles a lot in lane and actually really needs tank items, especially the components, to thrive in lane. You're usually going to be going Grasp, that's usually the normal setup, and you're going to be playing around your hero a lot, right? Your heal scales a lot with HP, so you want to take advantage of that. A lot of times you won't be able to get onto people. They'll be able to hit you first before you can hit them back. So whenever they hit you first, you need to be able to take the brunt of that damage and heal it off sometimes. And these items are your best items for those scenarios. Aegis Legion is the most cost efficient. Spectre's Cowl is also really good versus AP lanes. Giant's Belt is just good overall, and Bommies is just has a good bit less HP than Giant's Belt, but it gives you the wave clear that Rek'Sai lacks, especially in early game. Okay, and now we're looking at the A tier of items. So we got Stridebreaker. It's basically, I would say overall, it's a little bit weaker than Titanic, but it fills a really big gap that Rek'Sai needs sometimes, which is the mobility part. So sometimes certain lanes, you got like Vayne, or if you're fighting a Quinn, if you're fighting Aatrox, like these champions that can cut you out really easily, you're gonna need the Stridebreaker rush. You cannot go that Titanic, because as soon as you E forward, they're gonna do the little micro dash, or they're gonna knock you back, or whatever, disrupt you, and it's gonna make it impossible for you to hit them back. You need that Stridebreaker to make that little gap. You need to close that little gap to get right on top of them. And so that item's really, really good in those scenarios. But I feel like Titanic overall just generally outshines it. And I feel like in a lot more matchups, you're going to be building Titanic when you fight, the Dariuses, the Sets, the Cassantes, your genuine, like, actual top laners, not these cringe range tops that you fight sometimes. Now we also got Black Cleaver. This one, we're talking about Black Cleaver, we'll talk about Hullbreaker, and we'll talk about Shojin altogether. These are all very good items, especially if you're going into a Bruiser build. I have been enjoying this build that I saw from this other Rek'Sai top player, who I saw in Challenger at one point. And his build, his 2-item rush was Titanic into Hullbreaker. It is actually a very nice build, and it's very solid. It gives you really good pressure on champions, because you have such a good wave player, you have such good HP. It gives you a little bit of move speed. It gives you a good amount of AD, and the Hullbreaker passive scales with base AD and HP. So it gives you another reason to keep building more HP. So it gives you another scaling, which is really nice for Rek'Sai. Shojin and Black Cleaver are both basically damage amp items, and so they also pair really nicely with Titanic. Both of these items, I would say, are good. I'm sorry. Let me repeat that. All 3 of these items, the Black Cleaver, the Hullbreaker, the Shojin, they're all good after a Tiamat item. So whenever you're going tank, let's say, or let's say you go Bruiser, you immediately go Titanic or Stride, or let's say you go Hollow Radiance, and then you want to go Titanic, and then you want to go Hullbreaker. Usually whenever you go one of these Hydra items, you want to follow it up with a Black Cleaver, a Hullbreaker, or Shojin. Shojin's good if you want to be selfish and you want to have a damage amp. Hullbreaker's also good if you want to get a good push and you want to play for that on hit. Black Cleaver's good if you have a lot of AD on your team and you want to shred their armor. Okay? So now we have some of the tank items, the other tank items. You have Sunfire, Unending, and Spirit. And we also had Sterix. Sterix is good, just generally. It gives you all the stats you want. It gives you that tenacity. And it gives you that shield. That shield is basically just like a failsafe whenever you're like, man, they got like 2 assassins, they got a diver, they have like a Samira, like a really explosive team. Like whenever you go in, you just know you're gonna get like instantly popped. That's a really good item to build, and it'll help you out a whole bunch. And these other tech items, the Unending, Sunfire, and Spirit. Sunfire and Spirit used to be my go-to build for a good while. It's still a very solid build, and I still really do enjoy Spirit because it gives you that extra heal, and it's really good. But I feel like those 2 items just generally get outclassed by the Hollow Radiance and Thornmail. But whenever you have to go Sunfire because you're fighting a Darius, but then you're like, hey, well, they have an Ace on mid, so I still need MR. The Spirit Visage covers you on that front too, because you obviously can't have the Sunfire and the Hollow Radiance together. So those are a good secondary setup instead of the Hollow Radiance Thornmail. But I don't like them as much. Like if I genuinely got to pick, that's what I would always go the Hollow Radiance Thornmail setup. Unending Spirit is just generally just a good item on Rek'Sai. The build path for it's really good because, again, Giant's Belt S tier, Aegis of the Legion S tier. You like both of those items a whole bunch, and yeah, I mean it's just really good components for you. I don't really like going it in lane because you're not getting any wave clear. You're just gonna be really weak and you don't have any AD. It's really awkward for you to get that first item, but it's an okay second item and third item. Overall, it kind of just, if you want to go a build like Titanic, Hullbreaker, or into Unending Despair, that's a pretty good build. Or if you want to go Titanic, Sterix into Unending, that's also a pretty good build. It's just kind of like a I don't know how you put it. I don't want to build 2 tank items, so I'm just going to build 1 tank item. So I don't want to build one that's dedicated to MR and one dedicated to armor. I'm just going to build one tech item, and that's it, and the rest is gonna be bruiser. It's good for scenarios like that. Let's talk about, so we got the boots in this tier and Swifties. I think Swifties are actually a really great purchase on Rek'Sai top. It makes your combat mobility insane, in my opinion, because it allows you to space in certain matchups where you just completely get decked on. If you're going like a setup, like a Strikebreaker with the Swifties, you can literally turn an Aatrox matchup from a really horrible, like I hate this, I want to uninstall, to an actually like pretty decent matchup. You do this versus Vayne, you can do this versus Quinn, and it makes a world of a difference. And even in melee matchups where it's kind of, you know, you can space them out a little bit with it, it actually makes a very big difference for you. Now, of course, the other two boots, you know, Tabbies and Merc Treads, they're still really good, and they definitely have their purpose, but I personally think that this is a much better boot. And so with our starter item, we go D-Shield. That's usually the go-to. And the reason for that is, again, you're passive. You're going to be struggling a lot of lane. You're going to be taking a lot of hits, and that's just how it is. You're just going to be taking a lot of upfront damage, and you just got to be okay with it. And D-Shield is much better at that, obviously, than D-Blade is. That's why D-Blade is a tier down. Every single time I go D-Blade, I usually get really disappointed by it. I'm like, man, I'm more squishy. I feel like they can pressure me way more than, you know, I want them to. And I, like, you know, 90% of the time I'm going D-Blade, I feel like it's a mistake. I should always be going D-Shield. And I just want to reiterate, I have built all of the items in B to S tier. I have built the items in C and D tier. I built about 60 to 70% of these items. Some of these are just like, dude, there's no way, no fucking way this is ever gonna work, so I've never built them before. But I genuinely have experience with majority of these items, the actual good ones that I'm talking about here, and quite a few of the ones in C and D tier. Alright, so now we have Bramble, which is really good into, you know, AD matchups where they heal, or if they're going, you know, double AD with like AD jungle, AD top. It's really good buy. You know, even things versus like a Renekton, a Darius, even a Set sometimes, Aurelia, especially Fiora, especially, it's a really good purchase. Pickaxe is pretty good because the main stats you're wanting on Rek'Sai is AD, HP, and this gives you AD. It's just raw AD. You don't really care about lethality too much in top lane. You don't really care about ability haste. That's why the items, as you see they go down, you're gonna see more items with you're gonna see more items with ability haste. You're gonna see more items with lethality. You're gonna see more items with attack speed. These are stats you don't really care about as much. You know, now you may be saying, oh, well, you know, Strikebreaker has attack speed, so attack speed must be good on Rek'Sai. No, it's not that great. It's just kind of there. You don't really need it. Attack speed, I would say it's only really good in the scenario of I'm going Halo Blades. I need a bunch of attack speed. I'm going lethality. That's not how Rek'Sai top plays. You can play her like that, but I don't think it's good at all. Now we got Chain Vest, obviously, just armor, solid item. It's not as good as Spectre's Cowl. Spectre's Cowl, even though it's a little more expensive, it gives you MR and HP. You love that. You want the HP part in the build. You got to keep in mind, every single point of HP you get, if you complement it with more armor or more MR, it innately becomes more valuable. So whenever you're buying just straight up a Chain Vest or straight up a Bramble, your HP pool is smaller, and so what it's mitigating doesn't really matter as much as if you had MR and HP together. That's why Spectre's Cowl is so much better than Chain Vest and Bramble Vest. Okay, so now we're in B tier. B tier is basically items that I build every once in a while, but like I wouldn't like generally recommend every single game. Like if you go these items every single game, it's kind of trolling. You're kind of trolling yourself. So there's not really too much to say here. There's a few standout items. You might be looking at the Redemption or the Heart Still. The Redemption's actually, I did not think it would be as good as it actually is, because it gives you the heal and shield power, it gives you HP, and it also gives you the active, and you can just use the active on yourself. It's actually just free true damage on the enemy if they, stay in the circle for a long enough time. You get the heal, which is a really big deal, and yeah. And Heartsteel is a very greedy pick. Whenever you build this item, you're usually going to want to build it first item because you want to stack it as fast as possible. Or you can build it second item, which will take a very long time to build up. And I really don't like the idea of playing for Heartsteel for like 35 minutes. I don't think that's a really good strategy. Unless you're low elo and you want to do something like that, I don't think that's a good strategy. But the problem with Heartsteel specifically is that whenever you build it, you have no wave clear. So now you have no priority in your lane. You have no way to basically assert your dominance onto the enemy laner. And whenever they assert their dominance onto you, you have to let the wave crash. They can force out plates. They can force out a proxy. They can roam around the map and bully your jungler, bully your mid laner. Whenever your team wants to rotate to void grubs, you can't do anything about it because you're stuck under tower trying to farm because you have no AD. Now, the only thing I found to offset this slightly is to go D-Blade start. But like I said, I do not like D-Blade start. I think it's much worse than D-Shield start. It kind of like offsets how you play. You're a lot more squishy. You're a lot more capable of being punished. And I'm not really a big fan of that. So you're going a shitty starting item so you have the potential to be able to contest later, because you won't have the ability to shove. There's just too many situations where it's kind of risky for you to build it, and you're just trying to get hope for a payoff in the future. And again, of course, it's not good into things like Vayne or like a Jinx that can just mow you down. So, there are a lot of different situations where you should not be building Heartsteel, but every once in a while it's actually okay to build. But I would not, like, if you're just starting Rek'Sai top, I genuinely would not really recommend unless you're like low elo. And like you think the game's gonna go on for 50 minutes. So the rest of these items, I'll kind of just sum them up. Basically, all of these items, there are, I would say in general, situational items. Whenever you build these, some of them have better alternatives in A or S tier, but some of them have unique qualities that sometimes you want, like Edge of Night, or Eclipse, or Sunder Sky, or Borg. Your Deadman's, Force of Nature, these things that they have their own unique qualities. They're a little bit different than, what's in S tier and A tier, and they provide something a little bit more unique. Let's see. I have mobility boots here, and this is an old tier list, by the way. I have mobility boots here. That's supposed to be symbiotic souls, but I think those are actually pretty decent. I do need more playtime with them. I haven't used them too much, but from what I've played with them, they actually do feel really good. And they help you rotate around the map a lot, and I think they're actually pretty decent. Along with Tabbies and Mercs, you build them whenever. I personally like Swifties way more. And so, like, usually whenever I build these, it's kind of just to, like, mitigate me losing. So whenever I'm losing, I usually build these. Whenever I'm ahead, I like to build Swifties. Let's see. What else have I not talked about? Warmogs. It's kind of debatable to put this here, because I could make a case for it being in C tier, because Heartsteel is basically just a much better version of Warmogs. But if you want a little bit of a cheaper item and it gives you more upfront HP, you can always build this, and it has a unique passive. But I don't think it's really that good. I don't really find myself building it too much, but there are situations where you can build it. And we already talked about D-Blade, and then we got Cole. Okay, Cole, I think in slow lanes where you think, oh, well, they're not going to fight me, we're not going to really, play too hard. Let's say I'm fighting a Gragas player that's playing really slow. He's playing really passive, he's playing really well, and he's conceding CS because he doesn't want me to kill him. Well, I'm just going to play the lane just like a farm lane and buy Cole, and that is what it is, and I'll get 350 gold extra out of it. Or, I'm sorry, 450 gold extra out of it. And boom, that's that. That's just lanes like that. But you don't want to build it every single game. You definitely don't want to do that. because a lot of lanes are a lot more volatile, and you're gonna need to get to your Titanic Spike or your Hollow Radiance or your Thormo or whatever you're building. You need to get to that as soon as possible, and that will delay you. This is more of like a accelerating myself between my first and my second item. That's how I see Cole. So if I already know me getting to my first item isn't that important, then I'm going to be buying Cole so I can accelerate myself to my second item faster. Alright, so all of these items, genuinely, I would genuinely avoid them, especially if you're very, very new to Rek'Sai Top, or, you know, you only have like 20-30 games in Rek'Sai Top. I would not build these items. A lot of the times, whenever I build these items, I have before, it's usually just for fun. It's usually for like, oh, I feel like this build would be funny. Oh, I want to go crit. You know, I want to do this thing. I think it's funny. Yeah, I build these, right? They are not good. A lot of crit here, a lot of, you know, attack speed, a lot of lethality. Like, you can build these things, but you are wasting gold, most definitely. And you a lot of these you're gonna get popped. And now one of these might seem kind of like an outlier to you, and that might be this Iceborne and the Jack Show. I've tried these. I'm not really a big fan of either of these. Iceborne, I don't think it synergizes with your Q too well. I don't really like Sheen items and Rek'Sai. I don't think they synergize with their kit too well. That's why I have Triforce down here, because Triforce is another Sheen item, and I feel like if Rek'Sai was a better user of it, or if her combo was had more auto attacks spaced out, because what you do in a Rek'Sai combo is you basically clump all of your auto attacks together, right? And you are dependent on using an ability, then an auto attack, right? Well, by the time you get your autos out and you want to use the Shin passive again, you're still using your Q. And so then you have to like bite, then auto again. And I think that's just a little too awkward for me. I don't like that. I feel like the Sheen passive is kind of wasted on Rek'Sai. That's why Triforce is in B tier. Like, you can build it, but there's definitely better alternatives up here. And, you know, the more Sheen items down here. But that's why Iceborne as a tank item, I do not like it. You're not trying to hit any skill shot like an Alawi. That's why she loves the item so much. But you're not trying to hit any crazy skill shot with the slow, right? Jack Show, kind of same deal. Unending Despair is just a better Jack Show in my opinion. There's no point to build Jack Show. Some of these items here you can make a case for, like Trailblazer or Nice Vow, if you want to be more supportive to your team. But that's just not really kind of how I build Rek'Sai. I don't really think that she needs to be building like that. I don't really think that's should be your priority. But yeah. And then you have Mikhail's Blessing. This is just like basically a worse redemption in my opinion. You can use this to cleanse yourself and get like the extra heal and shield. But I feel like redemption is just straight up better because you get the damage, which is nice because let's say you're in a 1v1 or a 1v2, it'll actually make a genuine impact. It'll make, you know, you're going like this, like that, right? That's pretty big difference. And now we got the boots. You almost never build Berserkers. You never build Ionians, right? And then you have Darkseal and D-Ring. These two, I've tried them a little bit. I thought they'd be like decent, but the healing you get from the D-Ring passive, since you have no mana, is just pretty much negligible, because D-Shield just does it better. And the AP you don't really care about. Even though you get AP like from your burrowed Q, you have AP scaling on your burrowed Q and your unburrow, it's not really to a point where it makes a difference with the AP you get from these two items. I've tried that. I did that AP Rek'Sai build, and it was like really half-assed. I wouldn't say it was really that good, and so it was like one of those things where I'm just doing this shit for fun, and I'm gonna see where it goes, and blah blah blah. That's what it was, right? And this was part of that build, but after trying it a few times, I'm gonna tell you that you're gonna get more use out of the AD from D-Blade than you are the AP from D-Ring, and both of those items are just basically superseded by D-Shield. It's just way better. And Darkseal, kind of same difference, except you don't get the passive. that D-Ring gives you. So you got Vamp Scepter. I would never build this. Negatron Cloak. If you're gonna build Negatron Cloak, you might as well just build Spectre's Cowl. Recurve Bow is not good. You do not want attack speed, especially in the early game. This is a really bad buy. This is like probably the worst, one of the worst components I have on here that you could buy. And then Sheen, like I said earlier, you really don't like Sheen procs. And then D tier, just never build these items. A bunch of these have mana, a bunch of these are AP. You don't care about these. A bunch of these have mana, a bunch of these have AP. You do not care about any of these. And then at the bottom we have, you know, things you can't really build. You know, support items, runins, jungle items, because we're talking about Rek'Sai top, not jungle. But this overall is the build I would personally go, or the items I would personally go on Rek'Sai, and that's kind of my philosophy on all these items. Yeah, I think I covered everything. I just kind of wanted to run through and tell you guys what I thought, because I make all these videos talking about these different things and showing these different items, and people are like, oh, well, is Heart still good, or is this good, or is that good? I'm sorry. And people ask me, oh, is Heart still good? Is, you know, Black Cleaver good? Is, what about Shojin, or this or that? And so I don't want to sit I don't want to sit in the comments every single time and, you know, explain to people every single nuance about it. And so I thought I'd just make a video and, you know, express my thoughts that way. So I guess that's gonna wrap it up. That's gonna, you know, cover everything, and I appreciate you guys watching. I'll see you all in the next one. GG's.